Slightly mixed feelings as we go back to Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix. So many great things about that venue on the North Sea, and the atmosphere was brilliant, as predicted. The sky was blue, as predicted. But after 36 years, go to Schiblack, the very quick right-hander around the back, where I once stood with Frank Williams during qualifying when Alain Prost was at his peak in the Renault Turbos and said, look, isn't it amazing? Look at Alain through here. And Frank said, it doesn't look very quick at all. Of course, that's because the Renault was just going through on rails. And they're kind of like that today. Anyway, to get back to the point, the bittersweet point, Schiblack, that right-hander, is still about the same corner, about the same radius. It's still got the same undulation. And of course, it's not a question of being old and remembering it. For everybody who has any feel for motor racing at all, that corner really and that section is synonymous, sadly, with the loss of Piers Courage and Roger Williamson. By the same token, Turn 7, as it is now known today, has an entry speed of, we saw it on board, 162 miles an hour, 7th gear. It's not a lift in 7th. At the moment, they're just feathering in 7th, the quick guys. And I suspect on soft tyres in a qualifying run tomorrow, it will be flat in 7th gear. And then after that, I think the next right-hander's down to 6th, and the one after that about 4th. So really impressive corner there. But really strange to see so much banking at the Tarzan hairpin and also at the Hunza Rug, which was the hairpin behind the pits, now renamed after John Hugenholtz, the designer of Zandvoort, and also the designer of the Suzuka circuit. That's how good John Hugenholtz was. So that corner behind the pits, known as the Hugenholtz corner now. I mean, it was a great corner when back in the day, and what it was all about was coming out of the uphill on the left-hander, putting the power on, and it was all about opposite lock. I mean, if nothing else in the world was a corner which generated opposite lock and power slides, it was that left-hander. And that's gone now because it's so heavily banked that they take a sort of constant radius line around the top of the banking. Incredible, even steeper banking than we have at Indy. We had at Indy. So it's a kind of a shame, although I think John Hugenholtz, if he saw that, would think, wow, yeah, isn't that a lot of fun? In the same way that, I don't know, if Sir Alec Isigonis came back and had a look at some of the current super minis, and he said, oh yeah, why wouldn't I have done a hatchback or four-door or whatever? Anyway, obviously straying from the point there, but I think John Hugenholtz will approve. The long bank corner onto the straight, I think is great. I mean, it looks great. It's Formula One cars look good on banking, don't they? They look really good. But my fear, and it's been a fear all along, is that with those fast corners, following other cars, very difficult. And there's so much traffic, and Formula One cars really look a little bit out of place there. Okay, it's not as tight as Monaco, but they look too big for Zandvoort. I'm not being negative, they just are, and there's so much traffic, and the lap is so relatively short. We're talking 1 minute 10.9. That traffic is going to be an issue. Overtaking is going to be an issue. But it was good to see the drivers getting out of the cars, a few veins popping on the forehead and saying, really love this. And I can imagine why, it's a great circuit. Having driven Jim Clark's Lotus 49 around the Zandvoort, that they're not exactly the Zandvoort they're using now, but certainly the modified Zandvoort, I can tell you, it is a great circuit, particularly if you're in a nice car like that. Did that a few years ago. Anyway, Zandvoort 2021 Dutch Grand Prix. It should be a Max Fest, shouldn't it? I mean, that's what everybody's expecting. Although Lewis is doing a good job getting the crowd fired up behind him as well. And the Dutch are, of course, they're thirsty for Formula One. They've had Max for the last 4 or 5 years, and now they have a Grand Prix. They just, they want it all to happen. They want it now. But what we got today, actually, on the soft tyres were the 2 Ferraris, first and second, which was a bit of a shock because they weren't that quick in FP1 in the morning, but they weren't bad. They were there or thereabouts. But if you think about it, it's a sort of, it's a circuit where it doesn't have any really demanding corners for the cars, and it doesn't really favour high downforce or low downforce. It's sort of medium to high downforce circuit anyway. And Ferrari is a good sort of medium average car with a very good pair of drivers. You've only got to give them a free-ish lap, or even a free lap, dare I say, and a team like Ferrari are going to be right there. I'm not saying it was because they had a free lap. I think they were really quick and they did a very good job. Charles Leclerc 10.9, Carlos Sainz 11.0, and braked a little bit too late into chicane. Probably would have been slightly quicker, but then that's what Carlos does. So that was good. That's a very good start for Ferrari after a very poor weekend in Belgium, putting aside the fact there was no race. They weren't that quick anyway, were they? So here they are bouncing back for no reason other than there's a different circuit on a different day, and there are fewer things there to penalise some of the things they don't have on the car anyway, and to reward some pretty clean, quick driving. Just on the subject of quick driving around Zandvoort, I think that right-hander is the defining corner of the lap now. That's where a Lewis or a Max or a Charles will be able to impart a little bit more over a race distance than some of their peers. But because there's not a long straight after that, it's long-ish and you can get a benefit from it, it doesn't reward you massively. I think the demands of breaking into what is now turn 1, the Tarzan hairpin, and then into the Hanserag, the Hugenholz, I think that's less now with the banking. I think you can make more errors and get away with it. And there's a sort of line-locked line that you can take now, that you have to take really. And it's, it doesn't reward early turn-in. It doesn't even reward generating a flat car area, a little braking area going into Hanserag, because you come out of the right and everything's just there for you. There's a bank left-hander. All you've got to do is everyone will have the car relatively straight for a few seconds, or a millisecond probably, a couple of milliseconds. And then they'll get their acceleration run out of that bank corner. If that wasn't banked, it would be a much more interesting bit of road, I think. And we'd see a little bit more difference between the drivers. But it is going to be incredibly close because all the guys out there are very quick. And given free laps, they're all going to put in quick laps in qualifying. So it's all going to come down to traffic, certainly in Q1, probably in Q2, maybe even in Q3 actually. So it will come down to traffic, and that's not a good thing, is it? I mean, traffic shouldn't be defining a race circuit. Traffic shouldn't be more important than the actual corners. But I think that's kind of what we have, a little bit like Monaco. But I don't think Zandvoort, like Monaco, has the entry to the Casino Square or the entry into the swimming pool as two great corners. It has Schivlak, the right-hander, turns 7, and then the rest of it is fairly straightforward. It'd be difficult for a Lewis to do a much better lap than a Valtteri Bottas around Zandvoort, or even Max compared with Sergio Perez. If Sergio wakes up, he wasn't very quick today at all. So the afternoon session was really defined by two things. One, Lewis Hamilton stopping very early on with a loss of power from the power unit, and he actually pulled off on the circuit. Instant response from the garage, pull off Lewis, don't even try and make it back to the pits. Sebastian Vettel had a similar power unit problem in the morning, but dropped oil everywhere, and it took a long time to clear up that mess, and therefore a lot of time was lost for everybody in FP1, particularly for Pirelli, who are running the hardest compound here. They have obviously no data at all, so they've had to run the hard compound, particularly with the banking, and early on we saw a few spins on cold tyres, but the circuit found some grip in the afternoon, albeit there is wind there is a bit of dust, a bit Bahraini, coming off the North Sea as well, typical Zandvoort. And interestingly, the circuit surface is a new one, and it's been laid by and designed by and composed by Shell, would you believe? And who are Shell supplying? Ferrari. And who are 1-2? Ferrari. No, I don't think it's as simple as that. I think if it was, I think you'd get a lot more uproar from all the other Formula One teams. But interesting to see that there is that little bit of synergy there, nonetheless. So Charles and Carlos did those times with Lewis not running at all really in the second session, so that needs to be remembered. But nonetheless, they were quickest on the soft tyre. Max definitely looks the quickest on heavy fuel or long runs. Mercedes just behind, and then it's going to be very, very close between Alpine and Ferrari, it looks like at the moment, on the long runs. And Lando was kind of out of sync with compounds and what he was running. McLaren, Daniel Ricciardo was never quick. Lando P8 had a few issues had a very nasty issue actually with Esteban Ocon in FP1, Lando, when Ocon hadn't seen him. He was getting out of the way of somebody else and just basically took Lando off the road. And there's going to be more of that. Zandvoort is a really, really tight circuit for Formula One, and there's going to be more incidents in traffic. So that was Friday at Zandvoort. Ferrari 1-2 on the soft tyre. Max Verstappen looking very good on the longer runs with heavy load of fuel, and no doubt he'll be quick tomorrow on the soft runs, free lap permitting. And it was interesting, just talking about the free laps, interesting to see how all the drivers, presumably instructed by the race director, I would guess, when they're lining up in the pit lane now, they're just leaving a gap before they start, try to get some space between the cars, but it's not really working out, of course, because as soon as one driver starts a flying lap, inevitably there's going to be somebody else coming out of the pits or starting his outlap. Anyway, Max Verstappen very quick on the heavier fuel runs, the longer runs, and looking very good overall for Red Bull Honda. A big thanks to Jetcraft, a big thanks to you, the viewer, for watching and for subscribing. Let's finish with a view of the 1965 Dutch Grand Prix, courtesy of AP Archive, of what it looked like as the cars came out of that Hansrug left-hander, the Hugenholtz corner. See you tomorrow.